Fred Richani of TSC. We have right here via Zoom a very special guest, a returning guest. He's the author, the creator of Headlocked Comic. We're talking to New York's own, the incredibly talented Michael Kingston, talking to us about his latest Kickstarter campaign and all his great work with some of your favorite pro wrestlers. Michael, thank you so much for your time. How's everything going?
It's going good. We're in the middle of sort of Kickstarter hell, as I like to call it, but we're nearing the home stretch on our latest campaign and just trying to, bring it home, stick the landing, as you will.
Headlocked Comic Tales from the Road 3. This is some exciting stuff here. We've got some, a few major names involved, to say the least. Adam Cole, Amy Dumas, a.k.a. Lita, Andrade, Dirty Dango, a.k.a. Fandango, Cassie Lee, Jay White, the Switchblade, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Trinity, the current Impact Wrestling Women's World Champion. Can you tell us a little bit about the latest edition?
It's the sort of biggest lineup we've had sort of in the moment, considering obviously Adam Cole just main evented Wembley Stadium, and Trinity is the biggest star in Impact, and Andrade and Hobbs and Jay White are staples on AEW TV. Lita was just a tag champ. I mean, we've got some, in terms of like in the moment, I feel like this is probably the biggest lineup we've had. I also think it's our most entertaining lineup. We have less names than we normally have in Tales from the Road, but all the stories are a little bit longer because they're all really entertaining. It's a lot of fun. These stories were all so much fun to put together, and I think the people that have seen in advance really like them.
Now, we've had you on the show a few times, but for any new viewers and listeners, can you just give us kind of the brief history of Headlocked and everything?
I was always a fan of wrestling and comics, and I just felt like nobody ever made good wrestling comics. So I conceived the idea of Headlocked, which is a HBO-style drama about a theater major working his way through the wrestling business. And I started making that book, and I was summarily laughed at by everybody in comics. So I had to build it on my own grassroots style. I started selling it out of my book out of my backpack at wrestling shows, and sort of built up to doing conventions. And the cool thing was a lot of wrestlers who like comics, like the hardcore guys like Hurricane and Christopher Daniels and Rob Van Dam and Samoa Joe or whatever met me at conventions that they were attending as fans and bought my books from me and told me how much they liked them. And then, from there, that helped us grow. Getting Jerry the King Lawler to do the cover art for the books helped us grow. And then, once Kickstarter became like a viable avenue for publishing indie comics, we really kind of hit the next gear. And then we started doing the stories with the wrestlers, which are the Tales from the Road. And it's exceeded my wildest expectations, honestly, from when I started. I just wanted to make a cool wrestling comic, and being able to collaborate with some of my favorite wrestlers and whatever, it's been the coolest thing ever.
Look, I mean, you've had your fair share of great contributors in the past and everything else, but how did this crop of wrestlers come about?
I've done a lot of shows with Amy, and she always wanted to do something. Obviously I've done a lot of shows with Adam, and I think his Twitch stream is very it's very, I don't want to say inspiring, but kind of inspiring. Like, it's just very calming. Like, he's got such a great relationship with his fan base. It's like a whole different person. I was always a huge fan of Andrade, and I was able to put something together, through an intermediary there. It's just every collaboration is a little bit different. But they've been the cool one. Honestly, one of my favorites is the Inspiration. When they left WWE, they had done a podcast, and they had talked about having dysmorphia and stuff based on comments people were making on the internet, and just that sort of WWE, that sort of lifestyle of being like a woman on TV, particularly in wrestling and whatnot. So I had pitched them this idea, and it was the first thing that they did after leaving WWE. And they still said it's their favorite post WWE thing that they've done. This is one of their favorite experiences in wrestling. So that's really cool. We were able to tell, I think, an important story in an entertaining way. We were able to sort of spin it through like a Nightmare on Elm Street kind of scenario, and it's a lot of fun. But again, also kind of an important story that I think needs to be told. So yeah, it's always different. Sometimes people find me, sometimes I find them. Sometimes it's just kind of, the universe puts us in the same place.
You say that Hiroshi Tanahashi was the innovator, the creator of the Forbidden Door. Tony Khan created the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. But do you feel like you're kind of the Forbidden Door as far as outside of the ring? Because I mean, you've worked with so many different people. Just a list here, right? Samoa Joe, the Young Bucks, MVP, Joey Janela, Gangrel, as you mentioned, Hurricane Helms, Dolph Ziggler, Mustafa Ali, Danhausen, Matt Cardona, AJ Styles, and of course some of the contributors here again: Adam Cole, Lita, aka Amy Dumas, Andrade, the Iconics, Dirty Dango. It's just the list goes on and on. Do you feel like you've, in an unintentional way, kind of bridged the gap between like all these different companies amidst the the tribalism of the fans?
I think so. I think, one of the cool things about doing non-branded stuff is that you tend to avoid the more toxic elements of the fan base. I have friends that write comics for Marvel and DC, and I mean, I see some of the things that are said and are, one of my friends sent me a video last night. Some guy with 3 followers on Twitter made like a hate video about him. You know what I mean? Like he spent time on his day to make a video about why he should be fired because he didn't like the way that he was using a particular character. And that's tough. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't get that. Honestly, for the most part, everybody's been really good to me. Wrestling, and I feel like I get I don't want to say the better, but the better side of wrestling fans. Cause I think anybody that's involved in wrestling knows that like wrestling fans are like 50% of the best and 50% of the worst people that you know. And fortunately, I don't have anybody sort of who's built their identity around what I do. So, I mostly just get people that are here to read some cool comics and some fun collaborations that I do with some of their favorite wrestlers. And, so I've been very lucky in that regard.
I would imagine too, looking further, beyond this project, I'm sure at some point you would, the dream would probably be to do some type of animated series or live action series down the road. Knock on wood, if all the stars aligned.
So I would love to do that. I would love, honestly, like the thing I would like to do more than anything would be to do a late night animated series. Because nobody's doing that right now. And, when I started Headlock, nobody was making wrestling comics. And lots of people make wrestling comics now. And I'm going to tell you that I consider myself to be sort of the pioneer of that modern era of wrestling comics. We changed our logo to, literally the king of wrestling comics because I feel like we were here first. I'm like, I cleared a lot of rocks away from the campground so a lot of people could pitch their tents. And that's cool. Like the more the merrier. I don't have any, again, nobody's doing what I'm doing. So I don't care. So that part of it is cool. But yeah, I think that I don't know. I think that's my answer.
Yeah. Let people know right now if they want to donate to fund Tales from the Road Volume 3, you can do so on Kickstarter.com. And if they want to follow you, of course, I'll include it all in the show notes, but Twitter.com/HeadlockComic, Facebook.com/HeadlockComic, IG, Headlock Comic, and headlock.substack.com to sign up for your awesome newsletter, which I am a subscriber of, and you can check out all the great artwork and everything there, and just check out Michael Kingston, Headlock Comic, search it in the Google machine. You'll definitely find it. Urge y'all to check it out. Michael, are you ready for some random and rapid fire questions just to get to know you better?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. All-time favorite comic book author?
Paul Chadwick. Concrete was the book that made me want to write comics.
Amazing. All-time favorite superhero?
I don't know if I would say the X-Men got me into comics, but I always really sort of liked the everyman sort of superheroes. So there's probably an element of like Spider-Man, Daredevil, like those guys that sort of have real life problems. Like I never really vibed much with DC, like just because they always felt like gods to me. But I don't know, maybe Daredevil.
I will preface this by saying, besides Jerry the King Lawler, because we don't want you to get, pile driven the next time you see him, who's your all-time favorite wrestler?
And that's a really tough one. Just because I've been a wrestling fan for so long, and it's hard now because I know everybody not everybody, but I know so many people personally.
Well, who drew you in? Was there somebody that like when you who was like the first like wrestler that really like caught your eye on TV? Like for me, it was like
George,
Steve Austin and
George
Goldberg.
the
Who would it
Animal
be for you?
Steel, baby. I was watching Saturday night's main event, and there was George the Animal Steel and Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov against Mike Rotunda, Barry Windham, and Ricky Steamboat. And I was flipping channels, and I saw George the Animal Steel, and I was like, "What is this?" And I couldn't turn it away. He was, just the craziest thing I had ever seen. And I've probably watched wrestling in some form or another every day of my life since.
Who would you say in pro wrestling is the closest to what you'd say is like a real life comic book character? I know all these guys are and girls are very exuberant and extravagant, and they pop in your TV screen. But is there somebody that you look at that you say, man, this person would fit right into a Headlock story?
I think Jade looks like a comic book character. I think Hobbs looks like a comic book character. I think I think Otis is very much like a comic book character. I love Otis, by the way. I think Otis is so great.
Same.
But yeah, I think there's all different. I think Rey Mysterio is very much a comic book character. It's just different types of heroes, right? There's the hero that you wish you could be, that sort of Superman wish fulfillment thing, and then there's the hero that you think you could be that's relatable. And I feel like on some level, Mysterio is that relatable because of his size. You're like, oh, I could do that, and that's what makes him, but you couldn't do that because nobody can do what he's done. So
Rey Mysterio, dude, late 40s at the time we're recording this. He's holding WWE gold. It's unbelievable what he's
I
still
think
doing.
he's the greatest wrestler of his era. I think that I don't think that there was a time that people might not have thought that, but I mean, I think he is. I mean, he still has incredible matches on TV. Like he's still coming up with innovative spots. I mean, obviously, what he's done for Dominic, obviously Dominic should get credit too. But I mean, obviously, Ray's, behind him with that. So I think that, I mean, to me, I think there's arguments you could make for a lot of different people, but I feel like Rey Mysterio is the greatest wrestler of this era, of his era.
You do pretty much everything. What would you say is the biggest misconception about your job? And what would you say is the hardest role as a comic book creator?
For me, the hardest thing is just I'm nobody's priority, right? Like I work on a scale that I shouldn't be working on. I work with superstars. I work with people that are on TV. Um, I got a pull quote today for Tales from the Road Volume 3 from Billy Zane. So like I travel in circles that I don't belong in. But to do that, I mean, I recognize that I'm nobody's priority. I'm not making anybody rich. I'm not making myself rich. I just want to make cool comics. So we get to, I get to work with a lot of people, but you know, I'm the person that you fit in when you can fit me in, when that goes with artists, that goes with everything, with conventions, and I'm very persistent and I make things work and I'm super flexible. And because you have to be to operate at the scale and, amongst the, I have to sort of ride the waves of change in wrestling. I had a ton of things lined up that when Vince, got ousted and Triple H brought everybody back, like I lost a ton of stuff there. I had a conversation with Bray Wyatt about doing something, while he was out, and we had talked about a couple of things, and I'd had a conversation with Roddy Piper, about doing a story, and he died 6 days before we were supposed to do it at a convention. I had conversations with the Ultimate Warrior about painting a cover for my book. So like you just kind of got to be flexible because like there's nobody that needs me, and I understand that. And there's people that want to do stuff, and there's people that would be doing stuff with me right now if they weren't under contract. But I'm not ready. I'm not going to mess with somebody's 6-figure payday, to make my independent wrestling comics. So that's the hardest part, is just sort of, having to be the one that bends to everybody else. But I make it work, and I've made it work for 15 years. I mean, everything I've done, it's like the Avengers thing, right? There's like a million different ways it could happen, but there's only one way that it works, and that involves me not sleeping and bouncing around like a million miles an hour. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And hey, you're doing a great job. You're doing your best. Your reputation precedes you, and it's just, yeah. I think when you're an independent creator in any capacity, especially in your field, man, you gotta ride that wave. Ebbs and flows, and yeah, you've listed a lot of changes in the industry and everything. So, just if you don't mind me asking, so in terms of current contracted WWE wrestlers, with how things stand with the current business now that WWE's merged with UFC, they're now TKO on the stock market. Are WWE superstars, not counting legends, kind of out of the question now for Headlocked, or is it just kind of one of those things that just changes depending on whatever company and whatever thing they got going on business wise?
I mean, to a certain extent, they've always been out of the question. There was like a little nebulous time with NXT where like they were letting the guys keep their pro wrestling stores open, and that's I was able to do my story with Mustafa. And then Dolph Ziggler, we did a story. He just has the cachet because he had been there forever. That they just kind of let him do what he wanted. And I've done a couple of stories with guys that are under contract. I don't think, again, I'm not competing with anybody. I'm kind of under everybody's radar to a certain extent. So I don't think anybody really hassles me. I got a little bit of a hassle, here and there from some people, but for the most part, honestly, everybody in wrestling has been so unbelievably great to me.
Before we let you go, I gotta ask you, for anybody that isn't convinced already by now, why should people check out Headlock Comic?
I mean, I think the stories are all great and they're all super fun. And I think it's super fun to see a different side of somebody creatively that like as a wrestler, what Lita does, but now this is a different side to her. This is a side to see, a way to see a different creative side, which I think is fun. Like I always enjoy. I don't. I mean, it's kind of sad in a way, but like I always enjoy hearing about like failed pitches and stuff like that, just to see where people's heads are at and stuff. And then for people who are collectors, we have 4 Kickstarter exclusive covers. We have one of Adam Cole, we have one of Jay White, one of Trinity, and one of Hobbs. And those are only available through the Kickstarter. Like you can't get them anywhere else. We did something similar for Danhausen for Volume 2, and you can't find those anywhere. And you can't find them for less than $100 on eBay when they pop up. So I would say that if you're a collector, there's a good opportunity to get a very, very limited edition piece of merchandise from, top names in wrestling. And then also like we have a bunch of stuff. So you can back it for the book, but then we have like this complete sort of a la carte menu of I have signed art prints by The Undertaker. I have signed art prints by Sting. But I have pretty much, I think, the first thing that all 4 members of Judgment Day ever signed. We have all kinds of stuff. Bret Hart, the Hardy Boys. We have variant covers. We have limited edition stuff. We have old Headlock books. I mean, you can get a digital book for $15. Actually, you get a digital book for $10. And you can, but I've got somebody that's in the campaign right now for over 1,000 who wants everything. So it's completely customizable to whatever you want, to whatever your interest level is, to whatever your financial level is. We just want people to check out what we're doing because I think we're doing cool stuff.
You guys are definitely doing cool stuff. Much respect, Michael. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Before we let you go, where can we find you next? Any upcoming conventions or wrestling shows that we could catch you at?
This year, I'm doing New York Comic Con, Twin Cities Comic Con in Minneapolis, Galaxy Con in Columbus. I may add another 1 or 2, but I also have a couple of other projects coming up. I have to fulfill this. I have to get the next one ready. So there's a chance I may kind of try to lay somewhat low for my level this for the rest of the year, and then come out swinging the beginning of 2024. So we'll see. But I'm definitely booked for those 3 shows and working on a big 2024. So I hope people come along for the ride.